Today's episode is brought to you by the Sounds in Cinema podcast.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is a franchise chat about franchise rules. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man who knows, the man who can get the word out, the man who really wanted to have this chat, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hello, Tom.
The only way to grab the attention of the audience is originality. We feed ourselves with franchises. That's the opposite of what makes our culture multidimensional and interesting. Who said it?
I was just going to ask. I really don't know. Is it, Oh, man.
Once again, my impersonation might be a clue or it might be a distraction.
Well, because in my head I was saying, is he going for Dermot Mulroney? But
no, not relevant to the movie we're talking about at all.
Damn it.
No, this isn't anything to do with Scream 6.
Oh, it's not?
It's just a general franchise quote. But you'll recognize the person who...
Well, it sounded... For the first thought I had was Stallone.
Yeah, I know. It was very Stallone, but that was accidental.
But I axed that one, and then I was trying to think of somebody from Scream 6.
I'll give you a clue. He's the star of Alien Resurrection.
Oh, Ron Perlman.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, that is star of Alien Resurrection and the Hellboy series, Ron Perlman, shitting on franchises.
Nice.
Shitting on the films that made him famous.
That's great.
There's no Sons of Anarchy without Hellboy.
There you go.
So there you go. Yeah, we're talking about franchises today. This is a very special episode of the Everything Sequel podcast.
Yeah. Around this time last year, we both saw Scream, which I guess is Scream 5.
Yes, I had yet to see it when we recorded the episode.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
I was pure blind boxing.
Oh, nice.
But well, this time, I'm pretty sure you've seen Scream 6.
Yeah.
Or, what does it spell? Screams? Or just Scream? It just spells Scream again.
No, it just spells Scream again, but they do... At the end of the preview, they swipe a knife and the M becomes a 6.
So potentially both Scream 5 and Scream 6 are just called Scream.
Possibly.
Okay. As long as I know where we're at.
As long as you understand what's happening.
Yeah.
But that movie gave so much play to the idea of requels.
Right.
And we'd kind of been talking around this because this is the Everything Sequel podcast. Mm-hmm. You know, when is it a reboot? When is it a sequel? And franchises were now coming out with movies that seem to be both.
Yes.
And where does that leave us? And so upon your seeing Scream 6, you said, I got to talk about this. Like, I got an itch I got to scratch.
Well, there's a very similar conversation that is relevant to us in this film that is about franchise rules.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, we'll deal with the series separately at some point.
Correct.
So don't think this is not in lieu of episodes on the Scream series, but they're just having conversations in these movies that we as sequel podcasters cannot ignore.
Yes, exactly.
We have to address them as soon as humanly possible. Yeah, exactly. And once again, you know, as with once I finally got around to seeing Scream/Scream 5, I found that conversation about requels incredibly stimulating and thought-provoking. Yeah. And I felt exactly the same way this time about franchise rules. I'm second-guessing our entire purpose as a podcast because of the conversation they had. In Scream 6.
It cuts that deep?
It really does, and I don't know many series that are out there certainly having these conversations on screen, but having these conversations at all. This kind of self-awareness about what the industry was doing with sequels right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not being articulated in the same way that these movies are articulating it.
It's so intentional in these movies.
It is, and, you know...
But that's part of the meta quality of these movies themselves, which is...
It's part of the meta quality.
Has always been part of that particular franchise.
And, you know, without giving too much away about how I feel about the Scream series, never interfering with the slasher dimension.
Yeah, right. I agree.
Which is a real balancing act that most of the Scream movies, I think, pull off really well.
Yeah, that's going to be... I think that's going to be the hardest thing, is having this chat, but staying away as much as possible from the Scream series itself.
But the film itself makes it easy because it's a self-contained conversation.
That's true.
It's like I have the dialogue in question here. If you would like me to read it to initiate our discussion,
by all means.
You want me to read the whole thing and then we'll talk about it, or should we go sentence by sentence?
Like, how did this get made? Watching the Fast X trailer,
and then stopping it at second 3.
Okay, wait, I got to stop it here.
Yeah, or the classic James Bonding episodes, where they're watching the trailers for the new Bond films, and you know, something very early on will be mentioned that James Bond is no longer working for MI5, and it'll stop, and Matt Myra will go, "For fuck's sake!" Yes, we are cut from the same cloth, that man and I, when it comes to James Bond.
Clearly. Well, let's see how it goes. Go ahead and start, and
I'm only saying
see
that
if I
because
want to stop you.
I think we'll get a lot of mileage out of the first 5 words alone.
Okay.
Nobody just makes sequels anymore. That makes me want to end this podcast right here, right now.
Right.
I know we've got we're recording another episode tonight. I don't know if we should go through with it.
So, just hearing that line, my first thought was, how late in the game? I'd have to go back and research to see when the last single sequel, when the latest single sequel was.
It's a deceptively loaded sentence.
Yeah, right.
It's not even a sentence. There's a comma right after it. It's fucking clause. And it's already changed my world's view.
That's fascinating.
And it's just...
Because it's all franchise work now. It's all...
I had the same thought as you. I was like,
movies that are referred to as a universe.
Honestly, in my head, I was like, haha, funny. Wait, what?
Right.
And I couldn't think of any examples.
Yeah.
To disprove this in the entirety of the film industry.
That's crazy.
It is. I guess the only exception is the intentional part 2 when you split up a movie into 2. But that's usually part of an ongoing franchise.
Yeah, that's usually part of a franchise itself.
Well, that's what I was saying. I'm clutching at straws here.
Wow.
I know. So,
what was the last surprise hit where they just said, "Oh well, we got to make a fucking sequel"?
History will decide for us, and it's not looking good for us because of its success. But Top Gun Maverick.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I don't think they were thinking of making a third. I think they probably are now.
I'm sure they are. Yeah, right.
So,
wow. I mean,
it makes me feel like I'm an anachronism
yeah, right. But
in talking about sequels at all.
There is a part of me that does kind of go, whew, thank God for Top Gun Maverick.
Yes.
Maybe not for the reasons that most people would think, but for what we do, as of right now, that's just a single sequel.
That explains the appeal of the movie far better than any other explanation I've heard. So right. I guess we just ignore the the gravitas of that statement and keep going.
I was gonna say, go on.
We're in a franchise. Bigger cast, bigger budget, bigger body count, longer chases, shootouts, beheadings, new characters brought in just to round out the suspect list or the body count.
Yeah.
I mean, some of this I think is ironic because I don't think Scream 6 that was trotted out within a year of Scream 5 is necessarily working on a bigger budget. But I mean,
the scope got bigger. We're not in a small town anymore. We're going to New York City.
Yeah.
You know, there's an expansion for that particular franchise and that particular sequel within it. For sure.
That reassures me that we're on somewhat the right track. Because that feels like something we've been talking about since the beginning, about upping the ante.
Sure.
And so, in this case, I'm not so sure that this is a franchise-specific quality. I think this is just classic sequel upping the ante.
I remember thinking that when I saw the movie and saw this scene.
But I get why they're...
I understand why it's in there and why they're talking about it, but it didn't seem franchise-specific.
That also struck me as the most ironic part of this conversation, because as we go on, everything else is going to be pretty on the money.
Okay.
I felt this was a little more tongue-in-cheek as to, you know, we're stuck in some god-awful Airbnb in Brooklyn. You know, but they're telling us we have a bigger budget. Any more to say about that, or do we keep going?
No, yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say about it. I agree with you that on its face, I don't know that it's exactly true for franchises, but I get why it's in there.
Yeah.
Now, how intentional the irony of that is, I don't know. But these movies do feel intentional in that way. So
yeah, I'm surprised they didn't
mention.
I'm surprised they didn't mention, you know, having a sequel that comes out within a year. I thought they would have jumped on that.
Yeah,
maybe they, you know, it was the times were too uncertain to put that in the actual movie, but I think they're self-conscious enough to know that's a sequel convention that they're playing to.
Right.
The hastily trotted out sequel to a successful,
which, by the way,
reboot.
Does not usually bode well or pay off.
Nope.
In the way that it did for this movie. I mean, the movie is making plenty of money.
Yeah,
and people are liking it. It's got good reviews, and people are liking that movie.
And at a time when good reviews are hard to come by, that is
right. Yeah,
that is quite a feat.
All right, go on.
Legacy characters are expendable, brought in just to be killed off in some cheap bid for nostalgia. And then it says not looking good for Kirby and Gale, two of the characters.
Right.
Two of the legacy characters. Brought in just to be killed off. Legacy characters. I feel like this is something, again, we have talked about endlessly.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, specifically Scream refers back to Halloween, the Halloween franchise a lot.
Yeah.
And we have a classic example of that in Halloween 5. Where
the lead of Halloween 4 comes back.
And it's happened in all the major horror franchises, I'd say. Nightmare on Elm Street is guilty of that a few times.
Yes.
So it's interesting that they kind of pose that as a sort of modern condition of franchises. So again, that feels quite traditional, at least in horror, to me.
Well, and that's the other thing that's hard to parse out of all of this. The very first Scream it always is very intentional that they're talking about horror movies.
Yeah.
This particular Scream movie, are they? It seems like they're doing that, but you can expand it out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like it's just horror.
Well, that's you've got it perfectly, because the next thing, Laurie Strode, Nancy Thompson, Tony Stark, James Bond, Luke Skywalker, they all died so their franchises could live on.
Yeah, right.
So, first of all, you're going beyond horror here. Mm-hmm. You're sort of saying this is a tendency of franchises.
And what's great about that line is it, starts from 1978 and goes up to now with the Star Wars franchise, where Luke just got killed off in the last, half a decade.
It's interesting that they start with Laurie Strode there, because, there are there are timelines in which she dies, and then timelines in which she very much survives. And
yes.
I approve of the nod to the one where she dies. And there's Nancy Thompson, so that's the nightmare.
Yeah,
one of the nightmare examples. Patricia Arquette's character is also factors into that. Is it Nightmare 4 that begins with just killing off the cast of the last film? Is that the one?
It's got to be, because 3 is the one with all those characters.
And then, James Bond and Luke Skywalker was obviously happy to hear both of them mentioned, because that's Tony Stark, obviously. Mm-hmm. Obviously Iron Man as a property goes back a long way, but the Avengers movies, the Marvel Avenger movies don't, so... Mm-hmm. But James Bond and Luke Skywalker, I mean, that's a franchise that straddled decades of popular culture. So I think that is significant, because that is, in 1978, you could never imagine a world in which James Bond is killed in a bomb film.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And suddenly it gets to 2000, the 2020s, and it kind of goes down quite well.
Yeah.
Even with the hardcore Bond fans, there's no one really sort of like piping up saying you shouldn't
bent
have done
out of
that.
shape.
Yeah. Although they did with Luke Skywalker, so, that's the flip side to that coin.
Right.
Although I'd say more Han Solo than Luke Skywalker, where the controversy was.
You think?
I always assumed Luke Skywalker would die in that trilogy.
I'm not sure I totally agree with that, because you have to take off-screen matters into account as well. So when people...
well, let's leave aside the fact that, Harrison Ford would not have signed that contract had it not said, you will be killed at the end of the film.
Yeah. And I think most of fandom knows of his reluctance to come back to that role. Sure. So when you see the lightsaber go through him, I think at least my first thought was, yeah, I get it.
But then, it's like the Robert De Niro question. Like, he sort of stops doing certain kinds of movies and then starts doing stuff like Shrinking, and you're like, you could have worked a few more days on Star Wars. Like, you're clearly not busy if you've got time to do Shrinking. An Apple TV Plus sitcom. Anyway. So, I mean, that's... So, for all those reasons, I think that's fascinating, because it brings in the idea of alternate timelines.
Sure.
It's horror, but it's also other genres. It's modern, and it's classical.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of... Just generally the whole idea of, like, legacy characters, which I don't know, I thought was more our term than the industry.
Yeah, right.
But here it is being used in an appropriate way in a mainstream movie.
I don't mind telling you that there are times where I'm listening to other things, podcasts or movies or television, and I think, are there more people listening to our show than I think there are? Even say paywalls. Because it always seems the moment we've paid for something where we were thought, well, we don't want to pay for a lot of movies that we're going to do, but we want to do this series, so we'll pay the $4 for this movie or that movie.
Yeah.
And then like a month later, it's free somewhere. It's like they're listening to everything we do.
On the level that someone at Amazon Prime is fucking with us, I absolutely agree with you. Plus, I prefer that version to the obvious alternative, which is that we're plagiarizing everyone and don't even know it.
That's a distinct possibility.
It's a distinct possibility. But, this is, I mean, some of this is, it reminds me that some of what we're talking about, and this is where I do like a 360 from the depressing opening to this piece of dialogue, where it reminds me it's a lot of this is in the zeitgeist. A lot of what we're talking about.
Yeah, right.
The reason we started this, one of the reasons that we started this podcast was that most of what you see when you go to the movie theater is some kind of a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
So there should be a dedicated sequel podcast out there. Explore
right.
And as we've gone on, we've realized it's like, oh, you can't just talk about one type of sequel.
Yeah.
You have to break it down into lots of subcategories. And so that's why this conversation resonated to me, because it was being had. It was,
on
they almost
film.
had to. I mean, at the AMC, they almost had to drag me out. I was laughing so much when this scene happened. I could see a lot of teenagers who wanted to kill me for ruining this scene for them by laughing so much. I was banging on the arm of the chair. I mean, it's like it's basically like. It felt like, they put me up on the Jumbotron. Suddenly, the screen became a Jumbotron, and there's me! We wrote a piece of dialogue just for you. Just for what you're interested in.
I don't mind telling you, maybe not that extreme, but I had a similar experience. Because I saw Scream 6 a few days after you did. And there were moments throughout that movie where I felt like I was the only one getting the joke. And I am uproariously laughing out loud. Yeah. And I'm getting looks from people saying, "What's so great about this? Calm down."
Yeah, exactly. But
I'm thinking to myself, no, you don't get it. You don't get it.
This is a longer discussion for when we do the Scream series, but I was also grateful that I was in a room of people who were just there to see a horror movie and left happy. Mm-hmm. That made me feel good.
Sure.
It was a dual address. It was like literally it was dual address. I was getting something out of it on an intellectual level, and the people who just wanted to see blood and guts were getting something out of it too. And that, to me, is really good commercial cinema.
Yep.
Not that I'm commenting on the quality of this or where it may rank in the Scream franchise at this point. I will not be drawn, but once they said James Bond, I was like, someone is reading my emails, someone has hacked me. I need to I gotta start doing timestamps on the things we say and the conversations we have, so I can show them to people in court to prove that I was the first person to articulate this.
Did the thought ever creep into your mind? My God, am I going to hear Imbass any moment?
Or some variation on that, right? Like they would coin their own term that wouldn't be as good, That was what I thought was going to happen. Actually, I mean, I think this movie is the language in this movie is as good as anything in it.
I think it's exactly. Yeah, you're
so
right.
I would trust that. So it's just it's nice to know you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
But it also made me feel very alone. Because
why?
Because
you were laughing all by yourself?
No, well, yeah. As I say, make me feel more alone. Just that beginning, nobody just makes sequels anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we should adopt that as a tagline. That seems like the only way we can make lemonade out of this disaster.
As of right now, though, I state that's not exactly true, because we do have Top Gun Maverick. I'm so glad you mentioned the movie.
Which we both agree there will be a sequel to.
Well, I'm saying right now there isn't a sequel to, so...
Unless Tom Cruise dies doing a Mission Impossible stunt. That's
and I
really
also
the
think,
only way.
I also think you're right in the sense of I think they wanted to do a Top Gun Maverick, and then call it quits.
Yeah, I agree.
Its massive commercial success means that, yes, they will most likely come back. But the intent was for a single sequel.
But that goes back to the Future, and we never intended to make a sequel. That's why we set it up at the end of the film for one.
Yeah, right.
So I don't buy that. I don't buy that.
I don't know.
The alternative is that this is just a phase.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
That at some point the commercial logic of making single sequels is gonna reemerge, and that's all we're gonna get.
I mean, the other late
I can't see it happening anytime soon.
The other late example I can think of is Clash of the Titans and its sequel.
Okay.
So that's fairly recent. Wrath of the Titans, is that what it's called?
But this is an important distinction. Can you count movies where they're clearly planning ahead, but the movies just kill the franchise?
Well, I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know that.
Yeah.
God, did I see that sequel? I'm sure I must have, right?
Was it called Wrath of the Titans, did you say?
I think so. Yeah, that sounds right to me.
Clash of the Titans, Wrath of the Titans.
You're looking for a third
Retirement
title.
of the Titans. The Titans go west.
Burial of the Titans.
Titans in space. Titans X. I mean, the other piece of dialogue that is in this scene that struck me was they're making a sequel to the Requel.
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
Actually, we could call this episode a sequel to the Requel.
Yeah, we could.
Because this is us.
You just gave the title. We will call it that. Sequel to the Requel.
The meta quality of this episode is not unlike the Scream franchise itself, where
absolutely
this episode is a sequel to our Requel episode in the same way that this discussion is from a sequel to a Requel. Yeah. So I mean, and sequel to the Requel is not something I'd thought about before seeing this film.
Right. Yeah, no.
What comes after Requel?
Me either.
You know?
It's
like
right.
I feel like it's like, if a tree falls in the wood and no one hears it kind of level of Zen-like contemplation in that phrase. Like, whoa.
Yes. Your eyes can roll back up into your head and you could just collapse into a Zen state.
And win a mini golf tournament.
Yeah.
So that in itself is interesting, because this is something else we talk about is when you've done the Requel what do you do after that? And I guess the answer of this film is that then you just, after that point, you just franchise building.
Mm-hmm.
If you're lucky enough to be able to.
I mean, it's an
that.
interesting idea, right? Because it's so strange that Hollywood is so cautious yet cavalier at the same time. They're cautious in the sense that the only thing they think is going to make money are franchises, sequels, material based on some other medium, something like that. So that's reboots that, they want a proven commodity that they think they can shape into something that will make money.
Yeah.
So that's the cautious part. The cavalier part is how much money they're willing to spend on that.
Sometimes not even releasing the movie.
Right. Yeah. The Batgirl.
If it does enough for the shareholders, they don't even have to release the movie.
But it's an interesting idea because they're both cautious and cavalier. How intentional is setting up something else after that first movie? It's like they want to hint towards it, but they can't just definitively state this is going to happen. Because we've talked, maybe not so much on this podcast, but I can tell you the How Dare You podcast, when we did Van Helsing, that's a movie that goes off into a sunset saying, can't wait for the next one. and we, all you can do is laugh at it because that's absurd.
Yeah. And to for a more classic example of that, one of your another How Dare You podcast movie, or at least one that I don't know if you did you cover Flash Gordon?
Yeah,
you never
we did.
Oh, you did.
No,
okay,
we did.
Great.
But we did it as a teachable moment.
Right. But that ends in exactly the same way. The end question mark. The answer is yes.
No. Yes, you're right.
The end.
You're right.
But
oh, great.
So it strikes me as virulent thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because it can contaminate movies that were never meant to be thought of as franchises. So if you think about a movie like The Batman, it was very much, it wasn't posed as the beginning of a new franchise. It was seen as a one-off variation on the DC Universe characters.
I feel the exact same way about the Joker. I was really surprised to see that they're doing another Joker movie. Yeah,
that's a better example. But in both of them, I saw them as one and dones. But to get if you get any modicum of success, that suddenly it becomes impossible for there not to be another film. And now they're essentially, with the Joker, they're making a movie. They're making a sequel to a dream sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably, depending on how you took the end of that movie. But they're gonna have to do some Dallas style waking up in the shower nonsense to bridge those two movies.
That's fucking great. That's
so it's I think that's what it is it's a kind of the logic of the economic logic of it overtakes the whatever it was meant to be in the first place.
Yeah, well, go back to what you said at the very beginning. I'm not so worried about us because
well, at least we've diversified, right? We're doing reboots and
sure. Wrapped up in all of this, whether they're franchises or not, there's sequels within the franchises. So we're going to have plenty to talk about for plenty of time.
And as I haven't done an extensive survey of the other sequel podcasts out there, but I think we're kind of out on a limb when it comes to following franchises from beginning to end, or near beginning to possible end.
Yes, right.
Most sequel podcasts are not doing so. The more the more I think about it, I don't think we ever articulated that decision to each other.
Mm-hmm.
We just sort of decided it's like, okay, we'll do all the sequels in a series, and then move on to the next series.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's normal for a sequel podcast. I think they're more likely to just take a movie at a time.
A single sequel, yeah.
A single sequel, or even just a franchise movie, but just
no,
talk
yeah.
about
I mean, a single one within a franchise. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we're quite forward thinking in that respect.
I'd like to think
so. And
I think there are important conversations to be had within looking at a series.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been our bread and butter since the beginning of the podcast. Yeah. And I suppose we've kind of subconsciously acknowledged by choosing that format that franchises are the lifeblood of the modern day sequel.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right.
And maybe it goes back, maybe it goes back further than we think. When you start getting into the Dirty Harrys and the Planet of the Apes and the Omens, the Rockies, the Halloweens.
Sure.
There's a tradition of it as well. And everything in this conversation had in the film speaks to that. Like I'm not trying to one up what's said here because it's said perfectly. Yeah, and it makes all the same points more economically and in an entertaining way in the middle of an entertaining movie.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I was very excited by all these thoughts and
ideas and
yeah. To the point where I don't really remember what happened in the rest of the film. It was some kind of it's another one of those Agatha Christie multiple murderer things.
Sure.
I was just like, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
let's talk more about sequels.
Oh, that's great.
Although there was one non-meta. I won't spoil what it is until we actually talk about it. There was not one non-meta comedic moment in Scream 6 that I thought was an all-time great.
Oh.
And it's a very small thing. A very small thing that made me laugh a lot, almost as much as the laughter I had through this. Not quite.
Okay.
But I was more personally invested in this scene than I was the other. But I walked out. That was it. It was my two big takeaways. Was this scene and a moment like a throwaway comedic moment. That I thought I haven't seen anything this funny in a movie in a long time.
I mean, I remember thinking even right from the start, because the start of that movie riffs on the first movie and
it opens very well.
Yeah, it says almost the same thing that the first movie does, but it does it new and in an interesting way where I thought, this is scratching my sequel itch in a way that, I'm buckling up for this movie, but we'll get there when we get there.
With Bill's daughter.
Yeah.
To boot.
Yeah.
It's just like you're already sequel royalty. You walk into this film sequel royalty because you're the child of the star of a famous trilogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything left for you on this topic?
No, this is just a little one-off.
Just a little something for you.
Just a little, to fill the gaps, and it's one of those things that when it happens, you feel like you need to respond to it. If this was the journalistic equivalent. I didn't want
to wait.
Well, you've got to ask them about that.
Yeah, I didn't want to wait until when we got to the series. So when you brought this up, that made me very happy.
Yeah, this could be this kind of discussion could be a real albatross on our Scream episodes.
Yeah, I know. Right. We'll see.
Yeah, a real albatross around our neck, but I mean, we will go back to it, and it's by no means. In fact, this kind of conversation itself is a tribute to the kinds of conversations they have had in previous Scream movies.
This is just a tribute.
If anything, they're getting more sophisticated in how they're articulating it.
I
don't know. Maybe that's just because we're in the eye of the storm that we see that. Maybe they're saying as intelligent things about movies in general, but this, the movie begins. The first character you see in this movie is a film professor, and I don't think that's an accidental.
I don't think that's I
think that is
purposeful.
That's telling you that there's a level of this movie that you can follow through kind of film criticism.
Film criticism, right.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
Yeah.
Now, question for you.
Uh-huh.
We got a little bit of time. Should we tell people what they can expect next?
Oh, that's a good idea.
You want to do that?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's tease.
Yeah. So, next week, we're delighted to announce
we've decided that we're going to continue the podcast.
Yeah.
But now we've got to once again return to some of the horrible mistakes we've made in the past. We were just out of the hole and you put us right back in there.
What a whirlwind we went through in the last week or so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, where do you want to start? Should we just give the timeline of what happened? Well, it's been a while since... Okay, it started with me scanning through Disney Plus, looking for something to watch with my son, and him playing with Lego for so long that I looked at the entire catalog of what was on Disney Plus, and then it was bedtime. Basically, that's how it went. And then I saw Three Men and a Little. So basically, I claim I'm doing it to try and find a movie for me and my son to watch. What I'm actually doing is seeing if they finally got the courage to put Ed Wood up there.
There you go.
Because why Ed Wood is not on Disney Plus, I do not understand.
Yeah, that's
one of the greatest films of the 90s, and they own it. Mm-hmm. But Touchstone Pictures has a presence there, and Three Men couplet is there, and I just happened to look at the year, and I was like, I saw 1990. Didn't we cover all the single sequels from
early on? We had the 1990 single sequels.
I said, did we miss one?
Right.
Which at the time seemed, I didn't realize how naive I was at the time. It's almost quaint how naive that thought of did we miss one was.
Yes.
Because I'll let you pick up the story from here.
Well, that's the funniest part, was that you sent me a text saying, "Hey, I got news for you. We missed one from 1990."
Yeah.
And it's Three Men and a Little Lady. And I responded, I think something like, "Holy shit, you're right.
Yeah.
I can't believe that we missed that."
It's a big one. It's a big one to miss.
It's a big one to miss.
Yeah.
And randomly, what, a week and a half later, maybe?
Sure.
I'm on HBO Max, and I decide to watch Purple Rain, and at the end, Graffiti Bridge pops up, and I say to myself, "Hey, isn't that a sequel to Purple Rain?" And then I look at the year on that one, and it's 1990, and I thought,
amazing.
Holy fucking shit, I have to send Tom another message. The message
again,
being something...
No, not a small movie.
Right.
Fucking Purple Rain, right? It's not...
Yeah, right.
We're not talking... we're not talking strict direct-to-video here.
That's amazing. I believe I was about to send you a text, or I did send you a text saying, "You're not going to believe this, but Graffiti Bridge, 1990.
No, you did. You sent me that text, and I was
and
like,
then you sent me a text
I was like,
back.
okay, I guess we'll do the. I guess we let two out of the net. All right, catch and release. So we've got.
So we'll do those two.
Let's do those two, and I don't know how this happened. I guess I think I probably ended up looking at all the movies that were released in 1990.
Yeah.
Because for some reason the internet doesn't categorize the movies released in a certain year by how many single sequels came out that year.
For our purposes.
For our purposes. Thank you so much, Wikipedia. And I was just like, the two Jakes. Pretty sure there was no movie after that. I know it was a planned trilogy, but there was there was nothing after the two Jakes, which is a sequel to Chinatown. For those of you who don't know, and there's no reason why you should. That's not a particularly well-known sequel compared to the original.
Mm-hmm.
And I also saw, and at that point I saw that the Rescuers Down Under, the sequel to the Disney's The Rescuers, was 1990. And I went, I'm sure I ruled this out at one point. Like, because what happens with the Disney franchises is that you find out there's 7 extraneous video sequels.
Yeah, right. Yes.
After the last cinematic release. Not so for The Rescuers, the only exception to this rule. In Disney history, I might add. There's a Lady and the Tramp 2. That shows you how exceptional this is. And so I was like, okay, I guess we've got to do Rescuers Down Under and the two Jakes as well. So we underestimated how many single sequels there were in 1990 by half.
By half, right. And to remind people, we originally did Another 48 Hours, Gremlins 2, Young Guns 2, and Trolls 2. Or Trolls 2. I keep doing it.
It's because you look at me for verification, and then I give you the wrong option. That's why you keep getting it wrong.
Damn it!
Because I want you to say Trolls 2, which already was this is back in the classic crusty days of everything sequel podcast.
Yes,
where were we discussing whether there was a labor crisis in this country? Because that was already an outgrowth. And I believe it was your idea. I'm going to credit you with this. An outgrowth, because we decided that we'd bracket together
Another sequels.
That's it. We bracket together films by them both starting with Another.
Yeah.
That was our bright idea at the time.
We did.
And you quite wisely suggested, another way we could do it is we could bracket it by year. And look, there's all these other movies from single sequels from 1990. Yeah. I think at that point, our research must have been stilted.
Right, yes. Well, and also, when you look up a single year and you're trolling through, probably 250 movies, you're looking for numbers, is what you're normally looking for.
Yeah.
So the two Jakes and a graffiti bridge.
Yeah, true.
I still don't think I should have missed Three Men and a Little Lady, but
I don't think I should have missed any of them. The two Jakes.
Yeah, the two Jakes is.
I've been thinking about that movie since I saw it.
I have been wanting to rewatch that movie.
Yeah.
For a good couple of months now.
It may be the best movie in terms of wanting to rewatch it before actually doing it.
Yeah.
That movie exists in a limbo where you're going, I want to give it another chance.
Right.
It's a sequel to Chinatown, for fuck's sake.
Of course I should want to see it.
It was the second movie in a planned trilogy. It can't be as bad as I remember it. Anyway, that's going too far. So to cut a long and unwieldy story that's spanning 3 years short, an epic in itself.
Yeah.
We're going back to 1990.
We're going to go back to 1990, and
meta. We're going back to 1990, which is the beginning of our podcast, and going back to 1990, the year itself.
Incredible.
It is incredible, and we could have saved this for. I guess had it been one, we could have just saved it for a special episode, but luckily,
we're more inept than we thought.
And because we started to watch these movies under the impression that it would be what apprehension works too. I don't know why I got myself out there. perfectly good adjective for how I felt. But I meant to say impression. That we would be doing 1, max 2 of these, but because we're doing 4, instead of re-ranking at the beginning of the 4, we're going to do it at the end.
We'll re-rank, and we'll rank them against the previous 1990s. Right?
Yeah, so that seemed the most sensible way to handle this. So it'll be a little different from the normal format, but you're going to get a wrap-up episode at the end.
But similar to our format on the Patreon, if you're paying for the Patreon.
There you go. Yeah.
So,
if you're giving us money,
you'll be familiar with
You're more
this
likely
format.
to understand what we're doing. And that's where it pays off. Yep. Not in the content.
No.
But in the foreknowledge of what we're doing format-wise. And who knows? I mean, we might, along the way, just if we've missed 4, why wouldn't we miss 5 or 6 or 7?
Don't think I haven't thought about that.
I have a feeling once we get to the, we'll.
I can't wait for 3 years from now.
I'll be like minute 77 on Rescuers Down Under, and then something will pop up on Disney Plus. I'll be like, oh shit,
son of a bitch.
Yeah. You might like. I was like, no!
You know what's funny? Do you remember that this happened for the original 1990 sequels too? With Troll 2?
No, I don't. I don't remember that.
We discovered that one late.
We did!
You're
right!
We ranked all the movies and then said where we thought that movie would be before we watched it. And then went back.
Two dedicated listeners have been shouting at us this entire podcast, so you've saved us one or both of them getting in touch.
Yeah.
Because that's right. We ranked the first 4, not knowing how we felt about Trolls 2.
Yeah.
And which was good because we didn't know how we felt about Trolls 2, and to this day, I don't think I do. A mixture of admiration and contempt. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That sounds about right.
I could watch that movie again, I'll tell you that much.
You know what's funny is how often we reference that movie.
I know.
Every time we get a movie that starts quickly, we mention Trolls 2.
We mention Troll 2.
Because that's the gold standard of movies that just begin.
Fucking starting. All right. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We got a whole new batch of 1990 sequels for you.
Very nicely done. That's right.
And they're coming at you.
And we'll be trolling them.
Yes.
In another 48 hours.
All right, that's enough.
Okay.
So up first, 3 Men and a Little Lady. You can look forward to that next week.
Mm-hmm.
To tell us what you think about the idea of franchises, you're going to have to send us an email. So send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com or find us and send a message on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. I'd really like to know what you think.
Join our Patreon. That's another way to get in touch with us.
Please join our Patreon.
The least cost-effective way to get in touch with us, but nonetheless, it is a medium
if you're listening
of communication.
To this, if you're listening to this right now, please then rate and review us and let us climb the charts.
And
so more people can listen to this.
Since we're covering all our bases, watch our episodes on YouTube if you're someone who likes to get podcasts that way. We also have extra content on YouTube. We have video watch-alongs.
Boy, do we.
And we got another one coming up very soon. If not, already out.
Very soon.
Now I'm having to cover my bases in terms of when this episode comes out.
When the hell is this coming out? I know what was going through your mind.
I know. So don't skip. We have to put this in the show notes. Don't skip past this episode. This may be the most important episode we've ever
so
done.
Much information
we had an
available.
Existential crisis at the beginning of this episode. This could have been the final episode of the Everything Sequel podcast.
We're marching forward, I say.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know what I'd do without this podcast in my life.
Good.
I'd watch
All
a
right.
lot fewer sequels, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Although I tell you...
I'm not sure I could stop at this point. Every once in a while, I'm watching a sequel that we're doing nothing for, and I think, what the fuck am I doing this for?
I had the same... Do you know, literally, I had a weekend with no... You know, I could do whatever I wanted. It had been a long time since I'd gone to the movies without taking my son and picking the movie based on that.
Right.
Although a lot of those were movies I actually wanted to see, but
Sure.
that's beside the point. And you know, guess what I picked? Well, you know one of them because we've just been talking about it.
Scream 6.
Scream 6 / Scream. What was the other one? What else came out around that time?
What else came out around that time?
That I absolutely should have waited to see because of what we do for a podcast.
What was the other sequel around that time? You're going to have to tell me.
Creed 3.
Oh, yes, of course.
And it was only when, you know, I saw one on a Saturday, one on a Sunday. I got home and thought, what am I doing?
Tom, you got to see him on the big screen. Come on.
I'm like, am I not saturated enough in this shit? That I have to actively go out and waste my precious movie-going time.
You reek of sequel, sir.
It's becoming a real problem. I tell you, I've been on a transatlantic round trip recently, and I think I'm getting to the point where I'm afraid of watching original movies that don't have sequels. I'm actually fearful of it. And what I normally do is I opt out and watch a documentary. For some reason, I can handle that.
All right.
But there's something about that I'm not ready for that kind of investment of. So when this movie's over, that's it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for Ketchup Corner and a talk about franchises. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here. I'm from the How Dare You Awards. When you hear us next time, we will be talking about 3 men and a little lady. Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
I'm not about saving franchises. Who said it?
I don't know.
I didn't give you a vocal cue because it might come across as racist. Star of Space Jam: A New Legacy.
Is it LeBron and the House Party movie?
LeBron James. Yeah.
All right. Oh, does he say it in?
I don't know
Space
when
Jam?
I don't have any context for these quotes.
Okay, fine.
I frankly I am on a site. I'm just hoping that none of the things I'm seeing are viruses. But I'm not confident they're not.
Okay.
So I don't know when and where he said it, but just want to remind you he is the star of Space Jam: A New Legacy.
Very good then.
It even has the word legacy in the title.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, thanks for listening. If you like podcasts like I do, boy, do I have a treat for you. You need to
Stay on target.
And check out the Sounds and Cinema podcast. Listen as your host, sound designer and music creator Tony Parham, and co-host, musical performer and sound lover Derek Hansen, D-Rock if you're nasty, and I am, discuss all things sound related to film, television, stage, and theatrical productions. They discuss environmental sounds, bioacoustics, dialogue, the nature of communication through sound, but as an added bonus, they drink beer and try to
stay on target.
Find them wherever you get your podcasts and listen to the pure mania of a man who can charitably be described as Doug, the dog from Up, and another man with a soothing and sultry voice trying to get that man to
stay on target.
That's the Sounds in Cinema podcast. Tune in and listen to the sounds they are creating just for you.